It did.
And we are live, Tracy. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Peter?
I'm good. I gotta calm down now, though, because I'm stressed out that we didn't get on air at the right time, and it's because I had a technical brain fart. I uploaded the wrong preparatory video to YouTube, and needed to change that out. So we got that done. We got that posted so that everybody can go look at it when we're talking about it. Hopefully they'll listen to us and then go look at it themselves. But John O'Laughlin had a question this morning. He sent a video that somebody had a question about whether or not Donald Trump's video that he posted yesterday from allegedly Walter Reed Hospital. I was actually shot on an aircraft carrier, and you and I both took a look at it. We created a video that where we analyzed the motion of that stuff. And what do you think, Tracy?
My gut right from the first was that if somebody was either hand holding a phone, that's what I immediately go to. Somebody was hand holding that phone because the audio doesn't sound good. So it wasn't overly produced. He's not wearing a lapel mic. And to me, it just looks like somebody standing there holding an iPhone and doing this really quick. I doubt that they brought in a whole bunch of people. If you'll remember, he's supposed to be sick and potentially contagious. So you want to keep this footprint to a minimum of people that are around him.
Right. And I've done the same thing again, and I brought up the wrong video again. So I'm gonna forget this one, and then I'm gonna bring up the right one. Yeah, I thought that there were at least 3 different ways that the well, let me pull this video up, and then I can roll it while we're talking. Sorry.
All right. While you're doing that, Peter, I'm going to tell everybody why we're credentialed to have this discussion. How about that? And
okay,
you can just relax a little bit.
All right. That's a good idea.
Okay. So if those of you who aren't familiar with Peter, you go to his Twitter, which is at Peter Duke Photo. And that would tell you that he has a background in photography, fashion stuff. I don't know. Did you ever do any film work, Peter? Like then on set?
I did a lot of work as a still man on set, and I did a lot of marketing stuff associated with motion pictures. So a lot of times I was on set, and then for 5 years I worked at a post house where we shot all of the making of and behind the scenes stuff for major feature films. So you know, I haven't been on the production crew, but I've been on the set for decades while movies are being made.
And I try to do a quick tally while we were sitting here chatting in pre-pro. And I've done at least 10 feature-length films, done some television, and then some reality television. And the reality television world taught me a lot about how the news is made, or at least how to think about how news is made.
So what I did with this video after John asked his question was that I put a grid on it, because this guy was taking a big screen TV and he was sticking, he says he likes the one with the F Post-its. Yeah, the F Post-its are great, but I think that when I run this, then you're going to be able to see what I did. So I'm just going to run it. We don't have the audio going. And by putting a grid on it, then we can, be more accurate about seeing what's going on. And I'm going to jump ahead here because I actually created a version. This is a sped up version. So this is at 500, I think 500% speed. So you can see the wiggle a little bit easier. And then I also did it at 1,000% sped up. And to Tracy's point, I think this was probably shot with an iPhone, and that's probably what you're seeing is the motion stabilization software. There's a couple of different other ways that this could be happening. One is that if it was on a tripod with something called a fluid head, a lot of times when people are creating videos, the camera operator will use a fluid head and he'll keep his hand on the head in case there's a rapid movement and he needs to respond to it. And just by virtue of the fact that your hand is resting on the handle of the fluid head, if the lens is a long lens, which this looks like it's shot with a long lens, then you could have that. Artifact. The other thing that could happen is that if it was shot with a gimbal, there are gimbals that have head tracking.
You can explain what a gimbal is, Peter, because we're blown by these things. Like everybody understands what a fluid head is and a gimbal head. Okay,
well, let me go back to the fluid head. The fluid head is just a head that goes on a tripod that makes all of the movements of the person who's directing the camera smooth. That's why it's called a fluid head. And you kind of push the handle around, and it kind of makes a slow, smooth movement. Or if you're moving up and down, it smooths everything out. So the operator will be sitting there, and he'll have his hand on the handle, and people's hands move. So sometimes it'll go up or down a little bit. A lot of times, once somebody starts talking, you don't want to really let go. Because if you let go, it might create a jerk. So sometimes it's easier to just, you couldn't hold an iPhone that steady. I don't know, the new iPhone 11 has got motion stabilization in it that's pretty darn good. And if the person was sitting at the other end of the table holding the iPhone with their elbows resting on the table, holding the phone like that, I can imagine that as they were moving up and down, that something might happen. If they had a stick like George uses, maybe not. The other thought that I had when I was talking to Tracy was that if they had a gimbal, which is what George uses, he calls it his stick. It's the thing that that smooths. You can hand hold it and it will smooth the camera out. If it's on a gimbal, a lot of times the gimbal will sense motion in things, or it will, if it's head tracking, it will do that kind of stuff. I'm sitting here looking at a camera right now, and as I move my head back and forth, my camera is tracking my focus. And a
lot of the gimbals have an app that comes with them, at least mine does, that allows you to say, if I was filming Peter, I can tell it that's Peter's head, follow Peter's head.
Right.
It will.
Right. So, but that's our opinion. It's definitely not definitive. There is some motion in there, and we created that video so that everybody can go look at it themselves. I put the grid in 3 colors. I put it in black, in red, in green. And then I did it at normal speed at 500% and at 1,000%. So you can go through and check it out yourself and see what you think. My guess is I like to think of things probabilistically at this point, and I would say that it's probable that it's Walter Reed. But if I found out later that it's not, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, and to John's last 2 points, that could be the fluid head theory, he said, but I would not be touching the tripod myself. It's not a matter of touching the tripod. What Peter is saying is you would rest your hand potentially on the handle, right, just in case. You can see they've cut Trump off with enough headroom, but say he sat up straighter and sat back from the table, all of a sudden you would chop off the top of his head. So you need to be prepared for that. And then as far as saying he's used a gimbal, but he couldn't hold it that steady, my gimbal has a table stand. So I can literally just stick it there and tell it to follow somebody's head, and it will do those movements without me manipulating it at all.
Right. And which gimbal do you have?
The Zenith. I actually meant to pull it out, but I didn't do that.
I was going to run out to my garage and get my fluid head too. And I have my, it's out of reach. My Zygen Crane 2 gimbal.
That might even be the name of mine. This is mine.
Yeah, I have one that's like that, but it's for a regular camera. My Crane 2 has an app you put on the iPhone, and then you attach the iPhone onto the top of the camera, and then when you get the gimbal set up, you touch the face of the person, and then the gimbal will just follow them around. It's meant for like people who are doing podcasts who are like walking around their room and stuff. You know, they can walk.
It's a cheap version of a Steadicam.
Right. So, so there it is. Take a look at the video. You guys can tell us what you think. Tracy and I think he's probably at Walter Reed. But if I found out later that he's not, I wouldn't be surprised. So,
well, my other observation would be if he was really on the water, it would be much more steady. I think it kind of jumped. There's no rhythm to the movement. Also,
I know that it would be incrementally tiny, but the flags would move with the motion of the boat if it really was boat motion, even though you may not be able to see it move with the resolution of the video. There are some tassels hanging down there from the American flag.
So you would say you would expect to see the flags just ever so slightly rocking back and forth?
Yeah. Yeah, like right on the left edge there where the flag is next to the line of the door. And in the lower right-hand corner on the American flag on the left side where the flag is next to the line of the door. And then on the right side in the lower right side of the blue flag, again, the flag is right next to the line on the door. That doesn't seem to be moving at all. So the flags aren't moving. You would expect the flags to move a little bit, I think. I don't know. I've been on 3 different cruise ships, so big cruise ships. And, you know, things move a little bit, you know, when you're sitting at the dinner table, you know, stuff moves.
Well, here's the other question. Why would you put somebody who's not feeling well on a boat?
That's the best question. Yeah. Yeah. And the tell would be that they're giving him Dramamine, right?
Right.
So anyway, so I don't know. I don't know if that on a small boat for sure, but an aircraft carrier doesn't need to shake. Yeah, it does. It doesn't. But you know, like I said, I've been on the Disney Magic, and that's about I don't know how, it's a big boat. And then I've been on the Disney Dream, which is a bigger boat. And you know, things when you're having dinner, you definitely can sense that things are moving a little bit. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. And this was the best I could do to answer it. But I'm going to go with Tracy's. This was shot on an iPhone, and that's the motion stabilization. And, you know, it's an easy enough thing to check. I mean, if you've got, you know, I have an iPhone 11 Pro, and all of those things are, and there's Phil. Phil actually lived on an aircraft carrier for some time in the Mediterranean, I believe. So what do you think, Phil? Do you think he's on an aircraft carrier or at Walter Reed? So while we're waiting for Phil to let us know what he thinks. There's Scott Adams had a question this morning while we're waiting for Phil. He read a tweet. Let me see if I can pull it up. I think I have it here from Gabriel Sherman. Yep. So our aircraft carrier expert doesn't think it's a ship. So thank you for that, Phil. Again, these are all probabilities at this point until somebody shows us a picture of him. Although there are pictures of him just not in that particular room, right?
Right.
So, but I did see yesterday that somebody did post pictures of all of the different rooms in the presidential suite at Walter Reed. I'm not sure where those are.
It was the Daily Mail.
Yeah. So, but let me pull up this this tweet by
Gabriel Sherman.
Gabriel Sherman, right here. Is that it? So Gabriel Sherman said, just watch the Trump hospital video a second time. His breathing is clearly labored. He seems to be leaning on the table for support, and there's so much fear in his eyes. And uh, Don, Scott wanted to know whether or not I thought that that's what was going on, because Scott's analysis was that that's what photographers do. And if I can go back to the video, let me see, stop. He looks completely relaxed to me. Like he's just sitting there. He's leaning forward. He doesn't look labored. I think the difference between this Donald Trump and the Trump that we're used to seeing is that he hasn't pulled the back of his jacket down. Trump, because he's got TV experience. Let me see if that's the end. Let's just go back here. Because he's got TV experience, normally he pulls the back of his jacket down when he sits down, because that's what TV guys do. And he's not wearing a tie. But other than that, he seems to be very deliberate about what he's saying. And he seems to be very thoughtful about every sentence. But, you know, labored breathing, no. Keep propping himself up with his elbows, no. I mean, that's not what I see. So Gabriel Sherman, I think that when he tweeted that out, my comment was that confirmation bias is the critical disease of our epoch. And I'm going to stand by that. I think Gabriel Sherman's confirmation bias is getting the best of him, and he's seeing what he wants to see. So.
Well, I think Scott's specific question was about the leaning in on his arms.
Right.
Like would you have encouraged him as a photographer to position his body that way?
You know, Trump just in general leans in. He's a lean in kind of guy. You know, is that Sheryl Sandberg who wrote that book, Lean In?
Yes.
You know, it's part of his alpha male like posturing, and he does that a lot. I mean, it's interesting when you watch him walk out to the helicopter at Air Force One, he almost looks like he's falling forward. He almost looks like he's skiing a lot, because he's always leaning, you know, he's always, you know, leaning into whatever it is that he's doing. So I think it's a very normal part of his physiognomy? Is that the right word? The way that he carries himself.
But from a rapport building perspective, that's how you want to be. Like that makes you look like you're interested in what the other person's saying. And so this is a very strange medium to try to convey this message, right? So he wants you engaged because you're going to want to mirror his body language, which then would draw you to lean in more. Right.
It's like, let me tell you a secret. It's very, I would say it's, what is the word? Intimate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like he's leaning over and he's talking to you at a cocktail party. It's like, hey, you know, it's like that kind of a thing. So, yeah, Phil says it pulls you in when you're shaking. Oh, he pulls you in.
People in. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. He's always pulling people into a space. So I think that it's incredibly deliberate. And I'm not buying Gabriel Sherman's analysis.
No, I mean, the whole thing is contrived. It's obvious that notebook's put there to make you think that he's at work and the other folders and stuff. And it's like, this is how TV is done. When they put a doctor on film for any reason, they always stick him in a lab coat, and they usually cut to them. If they're doing a voiceover, they're sitting there talking on the phone to somebody. There's nobody on the other end of the phone. It's just to convey the idea that they're busy at work and they have stuff going on. And the lab coat is to give them credibility and authority.
Yeah, and sometimes they hang stethoscopes around their necks.
Right.
Which my father was a physician. It used to drive him crazy because he kept his stethoscope in his pocket. You know, he said nobody keeps it around their neck except on television.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, so there it is. We made the video. Go check it out. See what you think. But I don't see the flags moving. It looks like image stabilization to me. Okay, so while we're on the subject though, we should probably talk about Mike Cernovich was talking about lighting, and in these pictures. So let me stop that. Let me see if I can go find this other picture of, here it is. Let's see. And I had this all set up, and now I can't find it.
Of course it does. But this stems from the idea, one of the other comments coming from the people that want to pick this stuff apart to death was that Trump looked very pale. And I mean, that's a function of he's not all made up in TV makeup. And he normally puts on some bronzer or whatever it is on his face. This is why he's called the Orange Man, and he didn't look too orange.
Right.
Now that's a sign that he's deathly ill. It's like, no, they didn't bring the makeup artist.
Right. And the other thing too about these photographs is that the lighting in the White House is kind of optimized. They've got big picture windows in a lot of the conference rooms and stuff, and the light is coming in at the same angle as people's faces. And this looks like very kind of institutional lighting. You usually have cans up in the ceiling, with these drop lights. And I don't know why any architects believe that that's a good way to light a room, but I certainly don't. But if you're looking at this picture, you'll see that the light's coming straight down on his head. The top of his head is bright. The sides of his head are dark. There's a big shadow on his collar that, kind of shows you that his nose is much brighter than his eyes. And he doesn't have any makeup on. And to Mike's point, why would you expect him to have makeup when he's in the hospital? So, the good news is about this presidential suite is that he's got all of these facilities. The bad news is that the lighting is terrible and that he's not going to have hair and makeup. And so what? I mean, in a lot of ways, I think it makes him look more approachable as a human being. It's like, he's suiting up and showing up to work. He could be sitting in his bed, right, tweeting, which would be the assumption about what he would be doing. But my guess is that, yeah, they grabbed notebooks to make it a good picture, but those notebooks probably had stuff that he had to work on anyway. Or their menus, for the hospital. He's picking lunch out, and they won't bring him a Big Mac. So, yeah. So, where did I put my list? Oh, here it is. So we hit Scott Adams' question. We hit Mike Cernovich's comment. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about photographs, how photographs affect us. Because there's a guy that I shot pictures of last year, Enrique Tarrio. And I'll bring up a picture of Enrique. Oh, I didn't have to do that. Here we go. One day I'll get good at this.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Barnes. Welcome.
Hey, Barnes. How are you? So this is Enrique Tarrio. Enrique, I shot this picture of Enrique about a year ago because he was running for Congress. And Enrique Tarrio, in case people don't know, is the international chair of the Proud Boys, which is widely lambasted and libeled as a white supremacist, white nationalist group. And it's always been an ironic comment to me because Enrique is obviously not a white nationalist. I mean, if he is, he's a token white nationalist because he's a Afro-Cuban. And the reality is that I've been to several Proud Boy meetings. I'm not a Proud Boy, but I've got friends who are in the organization, and it's a complete mixed bag. I know lots of people in lots of different races that are in the Proud Boys, and it's basically a Western chauvinist group, meaning that they believe in life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and all men are created equal. and they don't like people stomping on that, which is what Antifa is all about. And to that end, they're willing to stand up to people who are challenging that assumption. And so that brings me to this guy, Mark Peterson. Mark Peterson is a photographer who I consider a hitman, meaning that he has a particular worldview and his photographs reflect that worldview. He won the W. Eugene Smith grant last year. I met him because he was at a Mike Cernovich Night for Freedom event taking pictures of people after he had won a grant from the W. Eugene Smith Foundation to cover white nationalism in America. So he was at Mike Cernovich's Night for Freedom to cover us for the white nationalism beat. And he had just finished going to a big Trump rally where he had done a really good hit job on Trump supporters to make them look, he likes to make people look crazy and insane. And, that's not to say that he doesn't actually go out and shoot actual white nationalists, because he does. He shows, he gets in with these groups. He takes pictures of them, but then he puts the pictures of Enrique up, and he's obviously tried to make Enrique look white in this picture because the white nationalist story doesn't fit if Enrique looks like this. So Mark needs to make him look like this. And, if you take a look at Mark's work, this is kind of an ongoing theme with him. He likes to take, here's a picture of Kellyanne Conway. Richard Avedon said all photographs are accurate. None of them are the truth. I'm no big fan of Bannon, but, I don't think you could take a worse picture. One of the things that you can recognize Mark when he shows up to your event. There he is, because he likes to use a 24 millimeter lens. I think it's a 24, and
it's a very short lens.
It's a very short lens, which means he gets very close to people, which means that he's got to be very friendly and accommodating, and he smiles a lot, and he's very personable. He's a nice guy when you meet him. And then he holds his electronic flash in his hand. And the reason that he does that is so that he can do this. He can move the flash into a place where he can get the most dramatic and the least flattering photograph possible. Lighting people from underneath is often referred to as Frankenstein lighting. Or Dracula lighting, or some kind of a monster associated with it, and so this I'll tell you though, I do love this picture. I mean, because this is a great picture, and that's not to say that Mark is not a great photographer. Mark is a great photographer. He is really, really good at what he does.
They've just weaponized him, is your point?
Yeah, but he's very, very good at making people on the left look desirable and cool, and making people on the right look like complete maniacs. And, it's interesting because you can kind of always tell the political leanings of people because, he doesn't do Bernie Sanders any favors either, which makes me think that he's probably a Hillary supporter. Likewise, there's another photographer, what's his name? A German guy, who shoots pictures of people. And if he doesn't like you, he uses a short lens and puts the lens in your face. And if he does like you, he pulls back and he makes you look better. So anyway,
what would the difference be, Peter, for people that don't know the difference between a shorter lens and a longer lens?
Right. A short lens. So it has to do with the distance between your nose and your eyes. if you use a lens that's a longer lens and you're farther away from the camera, perspective wise, your nose isn't that much farther away from the camera than your eyes. And so a longer lens is more true to the way that people perceive you. But as you move a camera closer and closer to somebody's face, what winds up happening is that the nose proportionally gets closer and closer, and the eyes are farther and farther away. So the nose gets bigger, the eyes get smaller, and you get this kind of like, weird perception. So this is probably a longer lens, right? But he's Mitt Romney. He's got the flash down low. He's got it. The light is coming from down and to the left.
Can you make that one bigger, Peter?
Maybe, yeah.
There we go.
Right. So he's also cranked up the contrast and something called the clarity in Photoshop in order to just maximize. You could tell that Mitt was in the dark because his eyes are completely dilated. So he's probably in a dark room when he shot this picture, or a darkened room, because it makes him look like he's high on drugs. And even though I'd love to think that Mitt Romney was high on drugs, my guess is he probably wasn't. And so, these are the types of things that Mark does. And I was talking to Enrique about it the other day, and I told him, I thought, because Enrique said that Mark is at every one of his events. So somebody is paying him to get on a plane, and go to Portland or go to wherever they are in order to be able to cover them. And my suggestion was that the next time that they see him, that they should start taking pictures of him in the friendliest, warmest, most loving way possible. But just to let him know that they understand what's up. So, and to kind of work against this trend, I did something that I did with George Zimmerman a couple of years ago, which was Enrique and I decided that we would take this photograph of him and put it into the public domain. And so I went onto Wikimedia Commons and I put it up on the public domain. So if anybody from Wikimedia wants to use this video in order to verify that I took this photograph and I put it in the public domain, here it is. I did it. It's my photograph. I relinquished the copyright. And the reason that I did this is because a lot of times when editors are looking for a photograph to publish, they go to Wikipedia and they grab whatever the picture is there because they are all free to use. And a few years ago, I shot a picture of George Zimmerman, and he and I agreed to do the same thing. And I put it up on the Wikimedia Commons, the Wikimedia Commons. And then I attached it to the George Zimmerman page, because on the George Zimmerman page, they always have his mugshot from when he got arrested. And whenever there's an article that gets written about George Zimmerman, it's always the picture of him, in the mugshot. And it was interesting because I relinquished my copyright. I put the picture up on the Wikimedia Commons. I associated it with the page on George Zimmerman, and then it was rejected by the editors. And the reason that it was rejected by the editors is because they said that no photographer would release the rights on a photograph that was that good. And I told them that I was the photographer and I was releasing the rights, and they wouldn't believe me. And they prevented me from putting the photograph back up on George's page. So even though that photograph is still in the Wikimedia Commons, the photograph is not associated with the George Zimmerman page. So somebody put up an Enrique Tarrio Wikipedia page last week, and I put this up on the Commons yesterday, and somebody needs to go associate it with the Wikipedia page. Because for some reason I can't log in and do that right now. And my guess it's because maybe I'm blocked from doing things like that because they don't like me associating good looking images with people that they don't like.
You
So
mean it's not open source and they're on after the best possible information or images that are related to the topics?
it doesn't seem like it, you know. Um, so anybody out there who's a Wikipedia editor, go into the Enrique Tarrio page and edit it and put this picture in. And let's see if it stays up, because my guess is it won't. So anyway, so that's what I've got on my list so far. Tracy, what's going on with you?
Well, I think we could do a little bit more on how the news, we've talked about this a little bit, they curate what you get to see, whether it's editing images, changing color balance. Like, I think I sent you examples of, there was 2 pictures of Trump basically sitting at that desk where we saw the video from. And one looks to be clearly taken from the same angle as the video was. And then one's kind of looking through a doorway at him. And you can tell that one's been tweaked with after the fact. So he looked more like his natural, quote unquote, color.
Right.
There was color in his skin. And as opposed to just one where he's completely washed out.
Right. Well, there is a, and Mark Peterson is probably like he's probably the best guy to talk about when I mention this, is that the idea that photographs are unmanipulated by journalists is just BS. It's the fact is that in order to get a photograph into a web page, it almost always has to either go through Photoshop or Lightroom. And the amount of control that you have on manipulating those images is infinite. And the amount of control that you have when you're taking the picture is pretty wide. There was somebody tweeted out something this morning, and I said that I would answer it, and I'm just remembering it now. And they were talking about about context and one other idea, and it kind of roughly maps to what I define as a great photograph. And I think that there are 3 things that you need in a great photograph. One is technique, and technique is anything that has to do with the gear. It's the camera, it's the lights, it's the it's anything that has to do with the technology that you're using in order to make the photograph. The second thing is the style. And for me, style is everything that is in front of the lens. Okay, so it's the person, it's what they've got on, it's where they're standing, it's all of those things. And then the third thing, which is probably the most important thing that is the difference between a good photograph and a great photograph, is the context. And it's the context to the person who's looking at the photograph. What does this photograph mean to them? The photographer has taken the technique and the style, and they've presented this thing to an audience, and it is impacting that audience in a specific way. And so great photographers understand that it's all 3 of those things. And so to that end, when you're pulling a photograph into Lightroom or Photoshop and you're getting ready to send it to the editor, there's stuff that you can do that will change the context of the photograph. You can grab one color in Lightroom or Photoshop. So, for example, the makeup that Trump uses has got a warm tone in it. And you can grab that one, you can click the orange button on Photoshop or Lightroom, and you could just drag that little slider over. And the only thing that changes in the whole picture is the makeup on his face. And you don't have to tweak it very much. Mark Peterson enjoys taking the sliders and moving them quite a bit. So his pictures are quite dramatic. But if you're being subtle about it, it's almost more insidious, because what you can do is you can really start to paint this orange man bad narrative. And one of the things that I'll do sometimes when I see a picture of Trump where he looks particularly, cartoonish is I'll just drop it into Photoshop and crank down the orange. It almost always turns into a normal looking photograph of a normal person. The other thing too about Trump is that he likes to golf. And when you golf, you get sunburn. And when you get sunburn and you've got dark glasses on and a baseball hat, you get funny sunburn lines on your face. And a lot of times the only way that the makeup artist can deal with that is by going kind of, really hardcore television makeup style. Because say again?
I said it's like war paint, because if you're wearing a hat, you're not going to be tan from here up.
Right.
So if you ever watch golfers after they win one of the tournaments and they take their hat off because they're sweaty, it's really disconcerting.
Yeah, it is. Although you're reminding me of the time that Trump showed up to that funeral after he had just walked off the golf course. And I did really like his hair that day. And it was great because he just had normal hair, and he wasn't this crazy bald guy, with the weird comb over. His hair was just sweaty and pushed straight back. And he just looked like a guy's guy. He just looked like a normal guy. And, my dream is if I ever got to shoot a picture of Donald Trump, that's how his hair would look, because I think that guy's pretty darn cool and laid back, and somebody that Barack Obama would want to have a beer with. Not that Trump drinks beer.
Right.
Yeah. Trump would have a Diet Coke. So what else, Trace?
Well, I'm just curious. Do you think that they should, the White House, Trump, et cetera, should be putting out more information about what's going on with his current condition, doing more videos, that kind of stuff, or just kind of leave it be and let the speculators speculate?
Well, it does keep him in the news cycle. It's interesting because it seems like every person in the world has an opinion about something, right? Was it a bioweapon? Was it negligence? Was it Kellyanne Conway? Was it her daughter? Was it, it's like there's like a million different scenarios, and all of them have one thing in common, which is that they keep him in the news cycle. They keep him front and center. They keep everyone talking about him. And, so I don't know how it gets better from a media saturation standpoint. It's certainly hard. The only way that you can avoid anybody talking about Trump right now is go take a walk,
Right. Although I noticed when I went into work on Friday, nobody was talking about it. I think that the difference is that where I am, all day in, day out, is the manufacturing sector. So, right. And that tends to skew, a certain direction politically. And it's kind of like, okay, none of us are panicked about this. We don't think it's going to kill him. Yeah, that's what I was interested to see, if anybody's going to come in and be like, oh my God, this is it for him. He's done because he's got the COVID. And it was just like, not even a topic of conversation.
Right.
Nobody thinks that he's going to expire, except for people that have been watching the news, and they have this bias towards this is so deadly. So I'm wondering if this is a time to introduce, when he recovers and everybody else that got it, because the list just keeps growing.
Right.
The GOP that have now been infected by, however you want to fill in the blank in that story, when they all miraculously recover, which you and I think, of course, they will, but there's a huge percentage of the population. I can't remember, I saw it. There was a Gallup poll where something like 30+% of people think this is way deadlier than it is.
Right. Well,
it's a perfect example that we'll see play out.
Well, here's the good news. The good news is that when he does recover, and he does, yesterday he, Gabriel Sherman notwithstanding, he seemed kind of normal to me. Mm-hmm. And if this is the peak of his being sick, and what everybody has been saying all along is that for most people, it's no big deal. Just like for most people, getting the flu is a bummer, but it's not lethal. Then that assuages people's panic as far as the disease is concerned. And it has this effect, which I've noticed on other people when the COVID-19 panic switched over to the Black Lives Matter panic, is that when things don't meet people's expectations, there's a certain percentage of people who wake up. It throws cold water on their belief system. And when that happens, they start questioning everything. And at that point, they're on a slippery slope to trying to figure out what the heck is actually going on. And that's a good place to be, because questioning everything that you hear in the media is probably healthy. I've been reading a lot of books on mind control lately. And I really do believe that the mainstream media is really just in the mind control business. And if we stop calling them the mainstream media and just start calling them the mind control media, then I think that people will have a healthier appreciation for what they're watching. Because as soon as you let go of the idea that what you're looking at is the truth, and you start looking at it as a cool story, then you change your frame for the way that you're taking all of this information in. Your blood pressure goes down, your respiration remains normal. You start to consider all of these things on the terms of whether or not they're accurate or not, as opposed to jumping straight to, holy crap, this is true. What does that mean for me? So that's kind of a long-winded way for me to say, I think that Trump's recovery and the recovery of all of these other people, I mean, Chris Christie notwithstanding, he's morbidly obese. He's, he's definitely probably got a lot more issues than, and arguably Trump is morbidly obese also, but I think that.
I don't think you would go so far as to say morbid.
Yeah, I think so. I think that
are we going off of the official.
Yeah, I think if you look at the BMI index, that he's probably morbidly obese. But Chris Christie is one more notch down the scale. And then who's that little gnome congressman?
Nadler.
Nadler. Yeah, he's at the end of the scale there, I think.
Yeah.
As far as BMI is concerned. So, body mass index. Okay. You got anything else on your list there, Tracy?
Well, I just wanted to play out your thinking we should switch the frame to the mind control media and drive that home. I agree with you that that's the business that they're in. I just wonder if that's the right framing that normies will accept immediately, or if there's an intermediary step to get them to mind control and instead present them as the manipulative media. And you can say to somebody, just sit and watch the news and try to count how many facts are offered during any given segment on one hand, and then you can go opinion on the other. Or this is why they have two different announcers for football games.
Right.
The one is the play-by-play, so they're giving you the facts. The other one's giving you the color, which is adding all the nuance and opinion and, those sorts of things. So those two combine to make the football broadcast. But the same thing is true on the news. And you'll notice very quickly that the facts make up about 2 to 5%, I would guess, in any given segment, say on any of the major news networks. The rest of it is people doing color commentary, which is all opinion based. And it's a lot of mind reading and speculation and those sorts of things.
Well, and it's a lot of confirmation, what I call fan service, where people are presenting the information that they know that the audience wants to hear.
Sure.
And the trick that I always try to tell people is that there's this hypnosis technique called a yes letter, which is somebody will say something general and vague, and you'll be unconsciously answering that statement that they're making in your head with yes. And Rachel Maddow does it, and Tucker Carlson does it, and Sean Hannity does it, and Chris Matthews does it, and all of the talking head. I guess Chris Matthews isn't around anymore, but all these people who are in the confirmation bias business are doing fan service. They're feeding their audience information that they already want to hear. And they're doing it in a very hypnotic way, so that the next day that somebody's going to a cocktail party, they're saying whatever it is that Rachel Maddow said the night before, and they don't realize that they've been hypnotized. And to your point, there's so much bleed over between quote unquote journalism and opinion at this point that, I think that there should probably be, you have to label non-GMO and all of these foods when you go into the store. It would be great if that when somebody was giving an opinion, a talking head was giving an opinion, there had to be a opinion tag, on the bottom, or a fact tag, and that there should be like ingredients. When we consume products in the store, they have to put the ingredients on the label. And I think that when people are giving us the news, they're mixing garbage in with the, it's the cat poop sushi scenario again. It's like they're giving you shit wrapped in white rice and seaweed and expecting that you're going to love it. And if you've already been trained to consume that and hypnotized into loving it, then you will. But at the end of the day, it's just poop. So there it is.
I think it covers everything that I had on my list.
All right. Well, that's all I got for today. So there's no reason to make this longer than it needs to be. Unless anybody's got a question, should we throw it out into the world and see if anybody's got any questions?
Sure.
All 14 of the people who are following us on
the combination of
Periscope, but I guess there's people following us on YouTube also.
Mm-hmm. That seems to be the case. And if you want to catch up on the broadcast that Peter and I have already done, you can go to therealityos.com, and that'll just drive you right to our YouTube page where we've got everything archived.
Right. And you can follow Tracy at Tracy L. Connors on Twitter, and you can follow me at Peter Duke Photo, and you can like and subscribe this because George Webb will get here next week and he'll tell us that we need to have 1,000 people following us on YouTube so that we can do something.
Yeah, and remember to hit the notification button because who knows? We've already upset YouTube now twice, I think, Peter.
Yeah. First, we put the JFK headshot from the Zapruder film, which they claimed was violent, even though there's lots of videos of it where it's not flagged on YouTube.
We took the video off of YouTube, so.
Yeah, and then we played the Kinks last week and shouldn't have done that. So
no. And we're going to try to do something with George this week, right? Peter, he's coming to you.
Yeah, he's going to be here in this room, and we're going to be shooting and editing a video. And my hope is that I can get him to talk to you. Maybe we'll do it in this medium, and then you can give him pointers with your experience on producing about how to get stuff done. Because I know that if there's one thing I can say about Tracy Connors is she gets stuff done.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, somebody's offering to help you, Peter.
You guys need help when George is here. Rick, do you live in Los Angeles?
Answer. And then we're using StreamYard for streaming.
Yep, we're using StreamYard, and it allows us to simultaneously stream on Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook at the same time. And Rick is in LA. All right. Yeah. I could probably use a grip if you want to be a grip. I can always use people. I can always use warm bodies. So send me an email, Rick, Peter at peterdukephoto.com, and I'll get in touch with you and we'll figure out how to do this.
Excellent. And the goal of this with George is to get his story in a cohesive, coherent narrative that people can follow from start to finish.
Yeah. And, when George and I first started talking about this 2.5 or 3 years ago, he wanted to make a movie about what he does. And I said, okay, great. What's the ending? And he said, what? And I said, we have to know where the movie is going to go before we can start. And so his losing his YouTube channel seemed terrible at the moment. But if you know anything about story structure, then you understand that something always really bad happens at the end of Act 2 to the hero, which forces him to reconsider all of his options and then do something else. George has gone through that, and George is now going across the country, and he's doing. He spent a week with Neighborhood News Hour, which I think is NNH. If you search on YouTube or any of the social medias, NNH will get you there. He spent a week showing them how to do research and how to put things together. Although I still think the weakness that all of the researchers have in general is presentation. When I used to work with Charles, we used to talk about the fact that in the old days, when you had classified ads and journalism outlets had budgets that covered all of their overhead, you had large research departments that would feed the journalists. So any journalist that was working on a story might have a few people working for him that were going to the library, and they were looking things up, and they were getting articles out of newspapers, and they were getting FOIAs done, and they were doing all of this work so that the guy or the girl who's writing the story had all of the resources that they needed in order to be able to put the story together. And then you have editors, and the editors tell the reporters whether or not they're going in the right direction. They decide how much of the story is going to get printed and how much of it is not going to get printed, whether or not it's all going to go out as one story or it's going to get cut up into 5 stories, all of those different things. And so you have this team, of people that comprise this discipline that we call journalism. And because the monolithic, mind control, mainstream manipulative media, how's that for alliteration?
That's a good one.
Is all, and it's 3 M's too, right? Which is a cult.
I thought it was just Scotch tape.
And that's a cult too. So the 3 and the M, the 3 and the M and the 3M are all a wink, wink, wink. So anyway, where was I? I was talking about mainstream media.
You're talking about how their budgets have gotten cut and all this. So
yeah. So you've got all these people out there in the world, like you've got Harry the Greek, and you've got John O'Loughlin, and you've got Mark Kulak, and you've got George.
There's a ton of people doing this stuff.
You got a ton of people doing this stuff, and incrementally, everybody's presentation is getting better and better and better, including us.
Luke Brzezinski has a really good. He knows how to do the production side. I think he's one of the ones. Luke.
Yeah, Luke does. Yeah, Luke absolutely does. And Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They both get it. They understand it. But if you look at any of them, they started out like us on this podcast today, which was a little rough around the edges. We thought that we had it all together. We thought that we had it done. I tweeted out that we were going to go live an hour earlier than we should have, which probably screwed up our production time, which made us look like we weren't organized because we weren't. But that said, things get better. And I think that one of the things that I want to talk to George about when he gets here is just, the overarching idea that doing the research is important, getting the information accurate is important, but presentation is important too. And I'm new to this moving, using myself as the medium thing, because I've been behind the camera my entire career. I like not being in front of the camera. I'm incredibly uncomfortable right now as I'm talking to you doing this right now. But it's the future, and it's the way that you do things. And the only way that you get better at it is by suiting up and showing up. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I'll get better. And if I can help other people get better at what they're doing, I mean, George, George has written 5 or 6 books. And I said, have you ever used Grammarly? Because you start to read his books and like the sentence structure and the spelling and, everything else is completely, higgledy-piggledy because he's writing things as fast as he can remember them. And he doesn't have an editor. And so
everybody needs an editor, right?
Everybody needs an editor. And my first job on the internet when I worked at News Corp, my boss, Liz Dubelman, it was 93 and the World Wide Web had just happened. Like I got hired at the same time that the World Wide Web happened. And Liz said to me, she said, the great thing is about the internet is that it's unedited. And I said, yeah. And she goes, and the bad thing about the internet is that it's unedited.
Unedited.
So editing, it turns out, I still think that mitigation or mediation or editing, whatever you want to call it, taking all of the information that's out there in the world and contextualizing it for people is the killer app of the 21st century, because there is too much information. And isn't that a Police song? And people need it contextualized because you can literally spend your entire life just trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And if people aren't doing that for you, you'll blink and you'll be gone and you won't ever actually have known what was going on. Which I'm afraid was me for most of my life, but I think that I have a much better idea now, thanks to people like George Webb and John O'Loughlin and Mark Kulak and who else? Ryan Dawson and James Corbett and all of these alternate, and Luke and
Tim.
Yeah. Although Tim, I don't know.
He doesn't go in the field much anymore. Luke, if you don't follow Luke Radikowski, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Luke Radikowski. Yeah, I think it's We Are Change Luke.
We Are Change. And he just goes anywhere. He was in Hong Kong at the height of the protests over there. He was in France, the height of the yellow vest. And it's just because he's got that in his head. I want to know what's going on for real on the scene.
Right.
So I'm going to put myself there and go find the story. And he went on Jeffrey Epstein's island.
Yep. Barefoot.
No, I don't think he was barefoot. I think Jeff Berwick, who was with him, was barefoot.
Oh, yeah. One of them was barefoot because they didn't think that captain was going to pull up right then. But
they took the chance that they had and investigated as much of the island and got it on film as possible before they were chased off.
Right. Yeah,
so,
no, it's
no major media network has dropped a reporter there.
Right.
For all intents and purposes, it appears to be abandoned.
The island?
Yeah. Well, no, for the crew that was there.
Yeah. But he did go to the temple. And, I think I tweeted this out a couple of weeks ago, although it might be gone now because my tweets auto delete, which was, I don't know if he was Marine, was that building that everybody calls the temple that Ali pointed out has 2 Masonic statues or a Rosicrucian. I don't know, 2 statues that he thinks are Masonic. It looks like it could have been a radar facility to me.
You're saying the dome on the top looks like.
Yeah, the fiberglass dome on the top looks like something that you could put. It wouldn't be one of those giant radar dishes, but it would be one of those more horizontal ones that are spinning that you could put on that, and that would give you a pretty good view of incoming aircraft or boats if you were getting raided. If anybody was heading towards your island and you wanted warning, then that seems like a facility that might be used to manage something like that. And once I noticed that, I realized that nobody else had noticed it, and I thought that was kind of weird, which is why I tweeted it out. Because why wouldn't anybody think that that's a radar facility? Because that would make sense for having a cinder block building with one door in it, and having everybody say, "Oh, well, that dome didn't open up into the center of the building. It had a flat roof with the dome on top of it, so it was purely for decoration. It was like, well, maybe it's purely to keep the rain off of the radar dish that's spinning around inside there. Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, well, with that, I will say goodbye to you, Tracy.
Goodbye, Peter.
And we'll see all of you guys next week.